US President Donald Trump has signed a proclamation that would require a new annual $100,000 fee for H-1B visa applicants. Now, this move is among many other changes to the program for highly skilled foreign workers that has come under scrutiny by the Trump administration. Now, speaking at a press briefing at the Oval Office on Friday, the Trump administration stated that this new measure will ensure that applicants are brought in by companies are highly skilled and are non-replaceable by American workers. The H-1B visa, as you all are well aware, is among the highly sought visas for entry into the United States. Now, thousands of Indians in the US entered through this work visa, which is sponsored by American companies, mainly, of course, in the IT sector. Meanwhile, the US President also signed an executive order for a gold card visa program with fees set at USD 1 million for individuals and USD 2 million for businesses.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the most abused visa systems in our current immigration system has been the H-1B non-immigrant visa program. This is supposed to allow highly skilled laborers who work in fields that Americans don't work in to come into the United States of America. What this proclamation will do is raise the fee that companies pay to sponsor H-1B applicants to $100,000. This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually very highly skilled and that they're not replaceable by American workers. So it'll protect American workers, but ensure that companies have a pathway to hire truly extraordinary people and bring them to the United States to work.
We need workers. We need workers. We need great workers. And this pretty much ensures that that's what's going to happen. I think, Sean, do you agree with that?
Well, they're $100,000 per year. So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land, train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here, $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board. We've spoken to them about the gold card.
They love it. They love it. They really love it. They need it. Go ahead, Sean.
Mr. President, it seems like there's two categories of visa programs. The H-1B, a lot of people believe take American jobs, and then the gold card and programs like EB-5 that add value and jobs to America. Is that sort of how you look at the visa program?
Well, ideally, look, if somebody's got the people, they're not going to want to spend $100,000 as an example in your second category. So it's not taking jobs. And we need certain jobs. We need certain skill jobs that we don't have. But they won't be taking jobs because, you know, ideally the people aren't going to want to, they're not going to have.
Investing in America.
Right, that's right.
So that's what I'm asking.
They're really investing in
The States of America.
which we'll use for cutting taxes and paying down debt. We think it's going to be very successful. Essentially, we're having people come in, people that in many cases, I guess, are, you know, very successful or whatever, and they're coming in, they're going to spend a lot of money to come in, they're going to pay as opposed to walking over the borders, and they may come from jails, prisons, and everything else. These people don't. They're very productive people. And they're going to pay $1 million. The corporation's going to pay $2 million. And it's going to raise billions of dollars, billions and billions of dollars, which is going to go to reduce taxes, pay off debt, and other good things.
Well, on this, we have a guest joining us on the telecast, and it's important to understand what exactly Donald Trump has said and the implications that this, of course, has. Well, joining me right now is Mr. Douglas Strand as well as Mrs. Sundarya Balakrishnan. So, I wish to first understand from you, of course, you know, this is, of course, a crucial announcement by the US administration. And, you know, given the tremendous cost of the visa, does this not de-incentivize companies to bring Indians to the US? Do you think that in some ways, you know, companies will be de-incentivized from setting centers based off the United States?
Well, I want to start by saying looks can be deceiving. There was a lot of big talk in the Oval Office, but America's got a lot of good lawyers who know how to read presidential documents and know that this one was drafted in a very sloppy way with not a lot of legal justification. So I would expect this to end up in the courts very soon, in a matter of days, not weeks. And I think it's very likely to be struck down. So if this were actually implemented, the results could be pretty devastating, not just for Indian immigrants, but for the U.S. economy, because this is a terrible policy. But I think that the only people who are really going to see their wages rise are going to be the lawyers who are working overtime this weekend to rush to court and challenge this very terrible policy.
Right, absolutely, sir. You've expressed optimism when it comes to this law being struck down, of course, this order being struck down, rather. I wish to also extend this to ma'am. Do you also share that sense of optimism? Because, of course, this impacts Indians, and it impacts Indians tremendously, given the fact that over 70% of the people who benefit from the H-1B visa are Indians.
Honestly, I defer to what Doug just said. I think most outlets are covering this as news that it is final, that there is no more change after this. But like Doug just said, this is the beginning, and you would probably see reports as early as tomorrow saying that this is being challenged in court. And I spoke to many lawyers, and all of them feel the same way, that it's going to be challenged in court. So I would just tell people to not panic right now and wait for the next few weeks to see the outcome.
Right, absolutely. So, and taking this to, sir, of course, sir, I wish to understand from you, of course, like I mentioned that 70% of the applicants are Indian. So does this not sort of create tensions or frictions, given the fact that India and US are already in some sort of rocky territory with the ongoing tariffs by the US administration?
I could only imagine that, yes, this isn't going to be great for US foreign policy. It is very clearly something that the Indian government, I think very rightly, would oppose. I think it's something that by necessity is targeting Indian immigrants who have made huge contributions and continue to make huge contributions to the US economy. So look, I want to apologize on the behalf of the vast majority of Americans, including many who voted for President Trump, who really value those contributions of Indian immigrants and do not support this kind of mindless nativism, and apologize in advance for the chaos and fear that this is going to cause. They're looking for headlines, that they're looking for big talk, but the president's not a king, and it's going to take some time for this to work out. I also want to point out, even the president's own administration didn't know this was happening. You can tell because White House officials are already scrambling to try to clarify what this actually means. The proclamation seems to suggest that any H-1B workers who are abroad right now, maybe in India visiting family, maybe they've been in the United States for years on a valid H-1B petition, the proclamation seems to suggest that they can't come back after Sunday without paying $100,000, which is absurd. And so a White House spokesperson told the New York Times, no, we only mean new petitions, but that's not what the proclamation says. So my heart really goes out to all the people, particularly in India right now, who are worried about coming back home to where their families are in the United States. I don't want to understate the panic that they must be feeling right now. And, the lawsuit might not come soon enough to give them comfort. And I think you're going to see a lot of chaos in the airports in Mumbai and New Delhi tomorrow as a non-trivial number of people are trying to rush home before this proclamation takes effect on Sunday.
Absolutely, sir. You've also, you've mentioned about the sloppiness in which this has been drafted. And of course, like you mentioned, something very important that, maybe in fact, even the Trump administration was oblivious to such an order being passed. In fact, I'll also tell the viewers for their benefit that, on the 27th of January from the White House, it was the same US President Donald Trump who spoke about how it's great for people with skills coming into the United States and imparting knowledge. I also wish to take this forth towards ma'am. Of course, we don't want to be alarmists here. We don't want to, of course, spread a state of panic. So what are some of the legal remedies that Indians have at this point in time that, they can, of course, utilize? And what are some of the tips that you would, as an expert, give on this?
As someone who is not a lawyer and has spoken to quite a few lawyers, I'm hearing universally lawyers tell that if you're currently in the US and planning a trip abroad, probably hold off for a while. A lot of lawyers are saying that even if you're on H-1B, you have it valid, postpone the trip for a while before you know how this is going to play out in the coming weeks. That's number one. And number two is, if you are outside the country, like Doug said, the court challenges may not come soon enough. So it means you may have to delay your trip until it's okay for you to come back to the States. But once again, we'll know that soon enough. But besides that, I would just say lawyers are also recommending look at alternatives to the H-1B, because if this doesn't go away and H-1B is not an option for many people next year, then it's good to start looking at alternatives like the O1 visa from now itself. But yeah, those are the three things I've heard from lawyers.
Right, absolutely, ma'am. In fact, I wish to take this back to sir. You know, she's made, of course, mentioned an extremely important point, which is to look into alternatives to, of course, the H-1B visa. Of course, but Donald Trump at the same point has insisted that this would not sort of disrupt the tech industry, and in fact, the tech industry would be more than happy to accept such a move. So, how are you looking at the domestic reactions coming in when it comes to, you know, such a policy being rolled out by Donald Trump?
I think we haven't seen the full range of reactions yet because this came as such a surprise. Again, I don't think a lot of people in Trump's own government knew this was coming. So I don't think you've seen a lot of statements from technology companies, from hospitals, from universities, from the many, many institutions throughout America that employ H-1B workers. But when the response comes, I think it's going to be extremely negative. And whether or not Trump realizes that, he's going to find out pretty soon.
Right, and of course, I also wish to understand from ma'am, of course, you know, so as mentioned about that, how, you know, the reactions are unfolding out, but are there any people, like, have there been any reactions from, of course, the community that's there, the Indians there, that are sort of reacting to this? And I also wish to understand from you, you know, would this create like an alternate center as opposed to the US, where companies would much rather take their employees and, you know, create an alternate center, given that, of course, the cost of the visa is going to skyrocket in a few days?
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of threads on, you know, Reddit, Quora, and just online forums. And I think the sentiment is that if this doesn't get challenged and if this goes through, this would be the end of the H-1B is what people are thinking. Because very few companies would want to spend $100,000 a year for an application. In terms of looking at alternative countries, I am seeing comments on the lens of people saying that it's cheaper for a company, if this goes into effect, to hire someone in India or Canada or abroad in general and just keep them offshore and remote than to bring them to the US, which once again is still going to hurt the American citizens. So, but yeah, I think the overall sentiment online in the comment section is largely negative for skilled immigrants. But of course, the proponents of this are happy because they think this would favor more American citizen workers.
Right, absolutely. In fact, as Donald Trump has said, as per him, this of course falls in line with his entire idea of hiring American. Well, sir and ma'am, thank you so much for joining us and sharing those details with us. Of course, the effects of this are yet to be seen, and we hope that it's for the benefit of everyone.